All right, if you'll please rise, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and start our meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen, brother. Good. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Union Township Board of Trustees regular meeting. This is for June 11th, 2020. Let the record show that all three trustees are present. Also present is our fiscal officer, Mr. Ron Campbell. Gentlemen, the first item of business is approval of our minutes. This is from the May 14th, 2020 regular meeting. You've had a chance to look those over. If there's no questions or changes, I'll ask for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call. Mr. Logue,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is correspondence. Mr. Campbell, anything to report tonight?
No, sir, I have none, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to our department reports, and I'll say right away that it's glad to see our department heads back after a little bit of a time away, but we're glad to have you.
Yes, I agree.
So we'll start off with our fire and emergency medical service, Mr. Chief Stan Dimely.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. For the month of May, the department made 185 emergency fire responses. The EMS unit responded to 393 calls for service. We transported 300 people to local hospitals. The department completed 634 hours of training, handled 27 public education details, and just all of those were pretty much drive-by, like birthday parties, graduations, anniversaries, those kind of things. They were drive-by events. And we completed 9 inspections with the building department. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions?
No, just thank you. Thank you for your staff and everything, holding true and holding us together through you and the police department for this time of national needs, I guess you could say, for everybody. The sickness we had going out. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your work, and the service department also for being there available for us.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, absolutely second that. Great to see everyone back, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief Dimely. Our next report is from our police department. Chief Scott Gaviglio reporting.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. For the month of May 2020, Communications Center handled approximately 2,900 calls for service for police, fire, and EMS. The police department did open back up to the public on Monday the 8th. Had people coming and going, business as usual now. Patrol Division, we took 283 incident reports, investigated 71 crashes, conducted 32 traffic stops with 60 citations and 8 warnings, conducted 367 field interviews, made 96 criminal arrests, 27 traffic arrests, and we served 59 warrants. Investigation to date has closed 120 cases, and fuel cost for the month was approximately $5,400. Concludes my report, sir.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
Sorry about the Honor Guard event being canceled.
Yeah, they practiced very hard. They understood, but they're disappointed. They're already back at it, but they're ready to go. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, always look forward to how well they do in that, and it's a shame, but a lot of events, good events, got canceled, unfortunately.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next report is from our service department, Mr. Matt Taylor, Director.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. In the Cemetery Division, from May 15th through the 31st, 11 burials were performed, generating $5,175. 5 resident graves were purchased, generating $2,750. 1 infant grave was purchased, totaling $150, and 3 non-resident graves were purchased, generating $4,500. 4 cremation scattering gardens were purchased, totaling $2,000, and 2 columbarium niches were purchased, totaling $2,000. The total amount generated was $20,140.20. And in the roads division, a total of 41 work orders were completed on 39 township roads. And staff is currently replacing the cross tiles in preparation for the annual road resurfacing project. In the Parks Division, staff planted 450 New Guinean patients and 250 begonias throughout the township landscape beds. And staff is also finishing up with the mulching on the remaining township properties. And that concludes my report.
I wanted to compliment you on the roses out front. They look really, really good, so I know you got some expert rose training from one of our staff members,
That is correct, sir, yes.
but they looked really, really good. They turned
Thank
out
you.
really nice this year.
It always looks nice,
Yeah.
yes.
Great work, thank you.
Our next report is from our Planning and Zoning Department. Mr. Corey Wright, Director.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. For the month of May, the department handled 13 inspections, fielded 24 complaints, issued 6 warning citations, 12 15-day noncompliance letters, and 7 30-day violation letters. Additionally, we resolved 13 violations administratively, and we handled 3 nuisance inspection or nuisance filings for the month of May. Regarding permit activity, we had a notable jump in May, 63 permits for the month, 2 commercials, 3 changes of use or occupancy, 4 single-family permits, 5 additions, and 30 pool and fence permits, 5 decks, and 3 accessory structures. Monthly revenue total of $5,493. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Good to see the permits are back open again, so people can get permits again. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job, thank you. Our next report is from our Administrator, Mr. Ken Geis.
Thank you. We did have one annual JED meeting. The others were postponed. During the meeting, everything was approved, and it was more pro forma than anything else. We're continuing the process to photo and record all of the headstones at Mount Moriah, and that really will be a nice feature when we complete it. When you do a search of a person at Mount Moriah, you're going to be able to actually see a picture of the headstone. We're also incorporating any obituary information that we have onto that, so when you search that, that will all come up at one time, and that will be available on your phones as well. So while you're walking through the cemetery, rather than having to have some other kind of means to, locate someone, you'll be able to actually do that on your phone, or you can do that prior to going there at any time. So we're really having some of our summer interns help us with that, so we're hoping to have the majority of that complete this year, but some of that may run into next year as well for that. Just with the police chief and the fire chief in their reports, I wanted to report that during the last month, we did have an uptick in our suicides and our persons of distress calls. One day, we had four calls, with one of them resulting in the police and fire departments finding one person deceased in one of our empty lots, and that investigation is continuing. It doesn't appear to be a homicide. It all is natural causes in that. But with the COVID and people being really confined in an area, we did see an uptick in those type of things. It appears to be leveling off right now. So hopefully, with things opening up, people getting out and back to really a normal environment, those will slow down. With the rains that we've had in the last 30 days, for the majority of the time, we didn't have significant storm-related events. On the 23rd of May, however, we did see some significant flooding mainly in the south portion of the township along State Route 125 and the areas just north and south of that. The service department's done a good job with managing the ditch lines and responding to, with the fire department, any flooding incidents where we can help and assist people by really pumping out their basements, crawl spaces, or any flooded areas. There's an agenda item tonight for our aggregation. The contract is really due for renewal and an extension on that. So the board will have that before them tonight. Again, it looks like we've been able to lock in we will be able to lock in a favorable rate as it relates to that. It looks like Air Care will be on site in July. That's the latest that we've heard. So hopefully in the next 30 days, we'll have the helicopter back on premise here with the staff from Air Care at least 5 days a week. We're hoping that we can get them back for 7 days, but in the early phases of this, we're going to start out with 5 days, and hopefully they'll agree with us that it's best to staff that 7 days a week. There's a resolution on the agenda as well that was tabled last time for the local government fund, and there is the opportunity for the board, because there was consideration of whether or not to include Newtonsville and Amelia on that. So we have the attachment that with the board's discretion, they can choose either one of those if they're so inclined to pass the resolution. There's also a resolution that relates to our bonds, bond anticipation notes. That's our annual debt restructuring that we do every year. We're in the midst of completing all the documents, and we hope to complete everything in August with either a late August or an early September execution of that agreement. And then the last thing is really just a sample resolution for the board's consideration. We've had some interest in people talking about the large inflatable pools that are becoming more popular in Union Township, and I think this year they're even more popular because of the closure of the pools, the restrictions on the public pools, and just a general wariness of people to get in pools with other people. And there is, the resolution talks about potentially suspending some of our permitting process as it relates to that. So that's on the agenda for the board's consideration and discussion later tonight. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, any questions or comments?
No, I have none, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Guss.
The cemetery photographs, that'll be really great. If you live out of town and can't get back for someone's, you want to view it online, you could actually see it online, or share it with your relatives and things like that. So, plus the history aspect of it, after we're all gone, and as family members, more and more generations are gone, and it's hard to remember who these people are, and this gives you good documentation in case you can't read it or things like that. So I think that's a great idea.
Yep, absolutely.
Cemetery does a great job. This one, I think there's nothing else they could do down there. There's always something they come up with, so. All right, that concludes our department reports. Gentlemen, tonight, we do have a public hearing. You should have a packet of information. This is for a Union Township overlay case, number 2-20-0. It's for 1150 Old State Route 74. Mr. Wright, did you have any opening comments about this project?
I do, and I'll be very brief, Mr. McGraw. This overlay is to authorize basically a conversion and reactivation of a non-conforming use and structure in combination. This used to be the W.T. Nickel barn. Everybody's familiar with that on Old 74 in the Willville area. Mr. Riffle in Southwest Ohio Property Preservation would like to reactivate this as a trade service business, and then also he wants to make some use of the rear of the property for some storage, also providing for RV and boat storage in the rear of the yard, rear yard of the structure. This is between Schoolhouse and Kitty Lane on Old 74, right in the midst of the Old 74 widening project. It's in the Summerside-Willowville corridor. The existing principal structure Well, I think that's as far back as the records go. I think we'd all agree that the barn is probably older than that. Situated 20 feet back from the front yard, or from the street. It will have a further reduction in front yard area due to the road setbacks for the project. And there's an issue in the back with regard to paving because, interestingly enough, this segment of Old 74 lacks sanitary sewer access. It's a kind of an island there. So there's a septic system there which precludes kind of paving of the rear lot because of the soils and the need to perk the soils and all that. He proposes a one-story accessory building, 15 bay-style storage units for security and privacy. He has gated access. He meets the B1 requirements for side and rear yard setbacks. He does have 4 parking spaces for the office and some loading and unloading areas. We are asking privacy fencing be added to the side property lines as well to secure the storage areas from the street and enhance the visual impact of the site. My guess is that could be blended in combination with any structure, and integrated in that. The applicant indicates that a 4-foot walkway will be provided, which will increase pedestrian activity, meeting the comp plan requirements. The drainage improvements will be coordinated with the hardscape improvements on the site to take advantage and maximize the project value of the Old 74 project while minimizing disruption to the site. Monument signage is a standard recommendation for this corridor, and that there will be paving along the front of the parcel, which is kind of a much-needed enhancement to the site, specifically allowing vehicles to exit in a forward motion. The action required this evening is in accordance with 1310 of the zoning resolution to approve, modify, or deny this request as submitted and with any further modifications, and I've gone over those, specifically monument signage, landscape buffering, privacy fencing, and no short-term, long-term, or overnight storage of stored vehicle or implement permitted outside and any storage shall occur either in the principal or accessory buildings. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Drake?
I have none, sir.
All right. Gentlemen, this is a public hearing regarding this case. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak on behalf of this case, either for or against? If you please come up here and state your name and address for the record, and then I'll swear you in for your comments.
My name's Doug Riffle.
If you raise your right hand. Oh, please provide your address. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. My residence,
Yes.
624 Quail Run,
All right, thank you.
Cincinnati.
Raise your right hand. You swear the information you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. So you're free to offer any comments you have about the project?
I just wanted to introduce myself and just be here if you had any questions about the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight who wants to speak on behalf of this case? Okay. Gentlemen, did you have any questions for Mr. Wright?
Only question I had was, Mr. Riffle, Mr. Wright said you are aware of the modifications, the 4 modifications that have been brought up?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all I had.
Okay. Mr. Logue, anything you wanted to say? Okay.
No, I'm good. Just, good, always is to continue to see investment dollars in the community, so, thank you.
And, Mr. I don't think you specifically mentioned this, but it's one of the modifications is some privacy fencing. Is that around the whole perimeter, or is it just in the back, or?
We had specifically looked at, he has privacy gates planned, but main access, what we were looking at, there's a portion of the site that is in plain view, specifically the eastern property line. You can
Okay.
see here where it's just kind of open or whatever, and we're just asking that that be screened or otherwise integrated with utilizing the building
And there's enough buffer with, there's some apartments nearby? Those are, okay. All right. Anything else, gentlemen?
I have nothing else, sir.
All right. Well then, according, with our section of 1310 of the zoning resolution, we're being asked to approve, modify, or deny this focus area overlay case. And once again, this is for Union Township overlay case number 2-20-0. Is there a motion regarding this property?
I'd like to make a motion that according to section 1310 of the zoning resolution that we approve the focus overlay case in the matter in case number 2-20-0, Union Township overlay case, along with the 4 modifications that are listed on the documents.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, congratulations, good luck to you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Riffle.
It'll be nice with the road improvements coming along too, that it'll be good timing for everything to kind of come together at once. So, yes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, the next item is old business. Is there any old business we need to take up? The only thing I would say would be the local government fund, but that's later in the agenda. We'll take that up
Right.
in due course under resolution. Okay. So we'll move on to new business. The first item is approval of paying our bills. These are prepared by Mr. Ron Campbell, our fiscal officer. Gentlemen, if there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve payment of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Logue?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. The next item is approval of our monthly financial report. This is also prepared by Mr. Ron Campbell, our fiscal officer. If there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion for that.
So moved, sir.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is approval of our purchase orders. These are purchase orders that exceed $10,000, and they're recommended by Mr. Ken Geis, our administrator. Mr. Geis, do you mind reading through these?
The first is to Schroeder, Monroe, Barbier, and Powers. It's for our law director fees at $50,000. The next is to the United States Postal Service for retail stamps at $50,000. The third is to Bethesda Healthcare Incorporated. That's for annual physicals for the fire department, $28,500. And the last is to ITC Technology Team Incorporated. And that's for the police department. It's the annual license and support for our alert software at $40,000.
And Mr. Geis, just to clarify so people don't get confused, the retail stamps, that's for our post office, and that's not for the township mailing. So,
That's correct,
yeah, just
yes,
so people understand those are being resold.
correct.
Okay, great. Any comments or questions?
No, sir.
All right. I'll ask for a motion then to approve the purchase orders as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Logue?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is a personnel action. This is for our service department. It's time for summer help again. We're being asked to hire Mr. Wyatt Smitty for the position of summer help, effective June 12th, 2020, at the rate of $9.75 per hour. The applicant has successfully passed a background check by the police department. Gentlemen, any questions or comments about this?
No, sir, I have none.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask for a motion then to go ahead and hire Mr. Wyatt Smitty for the service department.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So, Mr. Taylor, if you would congratulate Mr. Smitty and get him to work, that would be great. It's always good to have more help, right? A lot going on.
Amen.
Okay, next is the Union Township Electricity Aggregation Amendment. We're being asked to approve and enter into an amendment to the existing electricity aggregation agreement between Dynegy and Union Township, it's Dynegy, establishing a price of 4.99 cents per kilowatt hour for traditional customers, with an option of 5.09 cents per kilowatt hour offered for the 100% renewable opt-in. This will be commencing June 2021, extending through June 2022. This further authorizes our township administrator to execute any and all documentation in furtherance of the same. So just to remind everybody, the aggregation for electricity and gas was passed by our residents by a vote, and that allows us to negotiate a lower price on electricity for our residents. So this is further looking into the future for locking in a price now. And Mr. Geis, one question, just so we understand, if a better price comes along, they do have a ability to negotiate a lower price too. Right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So we're not stuck if also
This
the
is
bottom
just the
falls out.
cap.
Right, this would be the most. And then the opt-in renewable, you don't have to do the renewable energy, you can opt into that program if you want. So any other questions or comments, gentlemen, about this agreement?
I have none.
Mr. Logue, any comments or questions?
No, sir.
All right, I'll ask for a motion then to approve and enter into an amendment to the existing electricity aggregation agreement between Dynegy and Union Township.
So moved.
Second. Roll call. Mr. McGee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue,
Yes.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And our township administration does a good job of explaining the electric and gas aggregation program on our website. So it's a great place. You're not sure exactly how it works to get information, but, or they can call Dynegy, or they can call us if they need more questions answered. We'll be glad to help explain it further. Okay, we're going to move on to resolutions now. So first, we have Resolution 2020-09. Gentlemen, this is the resolution regarding the local government fund, alternative method. We're being asked to adopt Resolution 2020-09, authorizing the adoption of an alternative method for the apportionment of the undivided local government fund for calendar year 2021, and that per Ohio Revised Code Section 5747.53 excludes the approval otherwise required of the legislative authority of the city located wholly or partially in the county with the greatest population. So gentlemen, so you have the resolution which explains how the formula is set up, and it's basically similar to what we passed last year, other than there is a change in the allocation. There was a phased-in allocation process for over
That's
3
correct.
years, and there's a slight change from that, from last year. And then next year will be another change, and eventually gets to the actual permanent change. So that idea was to help phase in some of the city governments who were losing dollars from this fund after they could plan their budgeting better over a 3-year period. So, now, there's 2 exhibits. And this is just my opinion, but I'm going to recommend for tonight that we approve the same one that all the other townships have approved, which includes Amelia and Newtonsville. Now, that's against my better judgment and wishes, because I believe that both villages voted to dissolve, and they shouldn't be getting any more local government funds.
And I agree.
But the Township Association and the other townships have agreed to continue to keep the table the way it is. So hopefully, the dissolutions will be completed and in short order, and we won't have to, it won't be an issue because they won't exist. But I don't see the point of dividing local government funds to go to Amelia when they don't want to be a village anymore, so or Newtonsville. It should, be divided. What happens then is the money's equally divided out amongst all the townships and other villages,
That's correct.
and the population gets split by however the state auditor decides that's going to be done. But we have a census coming up, and that should solve that problem too, with the next census. But I think if we pass the one I'd like to use, excluding those villages, that we'd be in opposition to the other townships that could screw up getting this local government fund through.
I think it would. I think it absolutely would.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Mr. McGraw, but I think that we need to seriously look into modifying the document for next year somehow. This needs to be rectified immediately, I think. Should have been done this year, but it wasn't.
Right.
But I agree with what you said.
Yeah, and I agree with you too, as my kind of further research on it, it said, last meeting, colloquially, the new guy, on the street are involved, which also good representation of what, the public may have a question with, to try to understand those, that gap of information there between Newtonsville, Amelia. But with further review, fortunately, they provided the spreadsheet updated to us with the formula, so I was able to see the formula. Because that's what's really kind of spelled out in the document, but that's really, aside from seeing dollars and cents on the spreadsheet, I prefer to see the formula, because that's what really matters. Like you said, that's what's gonna drive, based on population. Fortunately, the census is kind of coming at a good timing, I think, for this as well, to kind of reallocate that. But, in further support of that, as far as all the townships and villages needing to be aligned in the resolution that's passed, the Ohio Revised Code 5747.53 that's called out in the resolution calls for that. But, to both of your concerns that I hear too, as far as getting it correct, paragraph B under that section calls out any alternative method of apportionment adopted and approved under this division may be revised, amended, or repealed in the same manner as it may be adopted and approved. So that can happen at a later time too. So that's a good benefit as kind of this progresses and moves forward. And as far as my understanding with, I know an attachment I never originally saw, but an email that the Deputy Auditor, Chris Melman, sent out referenced, essentially, this is communication with Kelly Flanagan, and it was with regard to the process. It took Kelly Flanagan's Miami Township who put this all together and got this package moving. With regard to process for 2021 local government fund alternative formula, the inclusion or exclusion of the former villages in the formula, they cannot speak to the legality of how it should be handled by the townships and villages, as contemplation for the 2021 formula. Former villages no longer own property, no longer conduct any business. So, to me, again, I think the part that I missed out with that is if it was, further exacerbated by COVID-19, not having, is my understanding there's actual, the OTA meetings that took place in years past, that, perhaps that would have been the time for townships and villages to get on the same page for, are you including it or excluding it, and not just be basically, a day late with getting something that's already been decided for them.
Right.
And not being able to have that, weigh in. So, and aside from picking up the, county, Ohio County Commissioner's Handbook on Local Government Fund, I've gotten up to speed a little bit more, so will not claim to be an expert there, but I never will. Always a life learner, but no, I support that position recommendation you have, and see both sides of that, and then also why it's pertinent to go ahead and have a motion to approve it as it's been passed by all the other townships and villages. So I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Move to approve resolution 2020-09 with Exhibit A that includes the Newtonsville and Amelia.
Okay.
For the local government fund for calendar year 2021, that per Ohio Revised Code, section 5747.53 excludes the approval otherwise required of the legislative authority of the city located wholly or partially in the county with the greatest population.
Okay.
That would be Resolution 2020-09.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call. Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And gentlemen, this is still dependent on the state legislature too.
I agree.
I mean, they could send no money at all, so especially with the current budget situation they may be in. So this could all be.
Absolutely correct. I think a lot of that comes
Well
back, a lot to the state auditor's office, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Geis, for a lot of work you did on that. I appreciate it. Also, we're going to move on to Resolution 2020-12. It's a resolution suspending certain private swimming pool regulations. We're being asked to adopt this resolution to temporarily suspend enforcement of certain private swimming pool regulations for temporary and inflatable pools, defining certain exempt categories and establishing the timeline for the suspension of administration enforcement of the same. John, this Mr. Geis spoke of before, these are the small inflatable pools that are very temporary. Is there any discussion regarding this? Just to, and to further define, normally if you put like an in-ground pool or an above-ground pool in Union
They're 4
Township,
foot or above.
you have to get a permit and have a fence put around.
Yes, absolutely.
This is in regard to the small pool that might be on your deck or something,
The
temporary.
inflatable type,
Right, like a day.
12, 18-inch high,
That's correct.
Yeah.
basically.
I think the current,
Clarification?
It's, the resolution states for up to 4 feet.
Up to 4 feet, that's correct.
yeah, 'cause I believe so current resolution, or the current 713 section, it's, 18 inches? So basically a body of water that would be put in someone's backyard right now, if it's 18 inches or greater, would drive a permitting process to the township for the pool and also the fence. And I think as the resolution spells out, we definitely am seeing an increase in the activity or pop-up of this with COVID, and either community pools or public pools closed down, and having that ability to offer something at a time period right now when I think a lot of our constituents feel freedoms pressured from health orders that are forcing on that one way is local township government is able to restore property rights to those citizens is potentially by either moving this forward or if there's open for modification to it in some sense. But I think that that'd be something well supported by community members.
And we have the option down the road of, if unforeseen circumstances happen where this is something we need to revise down the road, we have that option as well.
Yeah, and I think part of this with the suspension not amending the resolution, it's a temporary time period, kind of coincide with the national, emergency of the pandemic and the way that, that allows safe distancing for other members. Something that I received an email here, I'll share, from the president of the HOA at Bluffs at McGuffey Lakes. Appreciate the oversight, looking out for the community as a whole. As president of Bluffs and McGuffey Lakes HOA, I propose to allow for temporary pools in direct result of the pandemic. Allowing these goes beyond just allowing families to get outside for much-needed time together, but more importantly, cuts down the safety risk associated with overpopulation of local pools and swim clubs. While I understand safety measures are in place to keep issues from arising at these public locations, the reality is their HOA board unilaterally agreed that temporary pools would be both beneficial for at-risk families, but secondarily beneficial to families that could ill afford the cost of public pools and or would be overburdened by non-compliant ownership management at these swim clubs. Appreciates the board looking at this motion before the Board of Trustees, and he says, I'm sure they would agree that this is not only beneficial, but would be a tip of the cap to our local government advocating on behalf of its residents. So that's just one of the comments from local residents on it.
And it's my understanding that this resolution will be effective until October 1st, 2020 of this year. Is that correct? It's suspended after that date.
Right.
Yes.
Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yes. And I think, an area of caution or concern that anyone would always question with it is, you think of as a parent, you think of child safety. I know I was reading reviewing this, with this resolution, I was reviewing the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and, it identifies childhood drowning as the #1 issue for children 1 to 4 years old. And in that report, it does highlight guidelines and recommendations that we have in place, except it does not identify the 18 inches. And it does identify that over the last few years, the increase in the marketplace for, I think the new market demand that has basically been presented with regulation over the last 5-10 years, you've seen more and more of this. This is not the traditional backyard baby pool that was 18 inches or less. That was a hard plastic pool. But even in that report, it cites, barriers are not the sole method to prevent pool drowning of young children and cannot replace adult supervision. So, it's a difficult thing, but at the end of the day, I definitely trust our constituents, and same as we've been talking about COVID and individual responsibility. And we've got, I trust them to make the right responsible decisions. I know it's unfortunate, children can, I've since learned children can drown in, from a 5-gallon bucket, to, even full-size, obviously the full-size pools that are fully permitted, so.
And I might add also, even if we pass this, you're still restricted by your local HOA,
Yes,
that you still have to go, just because we say,
yes,
doesn't mean they say, so.
yes, absolutely.
Make sure you check with your HOA before you do anything.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely great point, because that's that, essentially more of the hyper-local, governance system that people moved into an HOA and bought into. And I think one thing I've learned out of this is, out of the calls that I know Mr. Wright's office has received, it's the calls where it could be a feuding neighbor, and now that it's the township being involved, and that is that the best return on our resources, and, do we need to necessarily get involved with the feuding neighbor aspect that is just calling on a permit? Now, I think if there's always a nuisance property, we always have something in place for nuisance properties as well. So, I think there's the right checks and balances there.
Okay? So we have a motion to move forward?
I'll move to, so move for resolution 2020-12.
Second?
Roll call. Mr. Logue,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Logue, for all the background information. All right, gentlemen, we'll move on to
Thank you.
Resolution 2020-13. It's a nuisance abatement resolution. We're being asked to adopt this resolution authorizing the abatement and removal of vegetation, noxious weeds, garbage, trash, and debris pursuant to Section 505.87 of the Ohio Revised Code at the following properties: 633 Fern Court, Cincinnati; 601 State Route 125, Cincinnati; and we have 4610 Edwilla Drive, Cincinnati. Gentlemen, you have a packet of information. Hopefully you've had a chance to review or look at the properties yourself. Is there any questions for Mr. Wright?
No,
regarding
sir,
this?
not this time.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion then to adopt this nuisance abatement resolution, 2020-13.
Yes. Make a motion, we adopt 2020-13, and as always, I'm appalled.
Yeah, it's incredible.
People don't take care of properties.
Is there a second?
Yes. Yes,
Roll call. Mr. McGee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue,
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, great. Okay, and finally, we have Resolution 2020-14. This is for the Series 2020 Bond Anticipation Notes. We're being asked to adopt this resolution 2020-14, providing for the issuance and sale of various purpose notes. Mr. Geis, did you have a quick introductory to this?
This is just the annual renewal of the existing debt. The maximum principal amount this year is $24,060 for this. We were required to perform the preliminary official statement on this that identifies the township's fiscal condition as it relates to the cash position and the expenses for the year, and this will allow us to issue the bonds for this amount. And the reason we're doing bonds for this, or I'm sorry, bond anticipation notes for this is because we need to renew this annually for the remainder of the term.
So, gentlemen, do you have any questions or comments?
No, sir, I do not.
No, sir.
All right. Then I'll ask for a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-14 for the Series 2020 Bond Anticipation Notes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call. Mr. McGee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue,
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Geis, for all the work on the Series 2020 bond. So I'll open the floor now for comments from our board members. Gentlemen, is there anything you want to bring up tonight or comment on?
I just want to comment and thank you once again to all of our staff and our fire and EMT services, our police department, our service department, and all our essential services here in the township. We're well taken care of during this COVID virus situation, and seems to be working along very well. I'm glad to see a full DS up here again with everybody smiling. Smile, Chief. Okay, everyone's smiling up here once again, and wish you all well, and have a nice weekend.
Mr. Logue?
Second, you hit everything right there, you know. Great to have everyone back up. I can't help but at least make a statement with, what we've seen around the country, our safety services, fire EMS, thank you for everything you're doing every single day out there, keeping our civilization together and community safe. And, that's something that I know not many people are able to fill your shoes. So
Amen.
thank you to those that do it, and
Amen.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. One item I'd like to bring up is looking forward to our schedule. Normally, we would meet on June 25th. My recommendation at this time is that we will cancel that meeting for June 25th in abundance of caution with the current COVID-19, but maybe with the anticipation of getting back to a normal schedule in July, where we do 2 meetings. The state has lifted a lot of restrictions, and slowly we're getting back to normal. But gentlemen, you may have differing opinions on it, but I've talked to Mr. Geis, and he thinks that we can conduct all the business needed without having the meeting on the 25th. And then hopefully get back to a normal schedule in July, where we have 2 meetings.
Is that the form of the motion?
I'll make a motion to that effect unless there's any more discussion.
I'll just ask the question, and any concerns from the fiscal officer?
I just asked him, he said no.
No,
Okay.
we're fine.
Okay.
And hopefully the curve will remain going downward, like it has
Correct.
been.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully.
we'll feel much more comfortable meeting at that point.
Sounds good. Sounds well spoken, sir.
All right, so I'll make a motion then to cancel the June 25th regular meeting and pick up business again. I believe it would be July 9th, and anticipate also meeting July 23rd. Do those dates
Right.
look correct to everybody?
Yeah, 9/23.
Okay, or 7/23. The 9th and the 23rd, you're right. Okay. I think you said 9th, I thought you meant September.
9 and 23, I said.
We don't need that long of a break. All right, so if that's okay, I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second it.
Roll call. Mr. McGraw,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Logue.
Yes, sir.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you for that bit of business. And I also want to echo what you said, Mr. Loeb, about our safety services, that they have our full support,
Amen.
and we'll continue to back them and help them in their endeavors, make their jobs easier to do in these very difficult times. But gentlemen, you do have our support 100%. All right, and right now I'll open the floor then for public comments. Is there anybody here tonight who would like to make a comment or ask a question? All right, we appreciate the people who did come out in person to our meeting. We really do appreciate that, but we're also streaming live on YouTube. We also have Facebook where you can watch the meetings. If you don't have time or can't be here for a meeting or don't feel safe, you can watch from the comfort of your home. We also have UTTV, where if you have cable, Spectrum cable, you could watch it there also. But our video staff does a great job of recording the meetings. They're also on our website. Once they're archived and documented, then they go on our website. You can watch them at a later date. So lots of different ways to see our meeting if you so choose. So. Then we got some upcoming events. Gentlemen, I'll read through these real quick. I just want to mention our post office, which is downstairs here in the Civic Center, is still open for business. They're taking all the normal precautions for retail business, and a great place to get packages mailed, get stamps, especially with everybody ordering online these days. It's a great way to return stuff, or you can even have stuff shipped right out of there. You're trying to maybe send to somebody else. Our Civic Center offices are open to the public for zoning permits and general information. Our parks are now in the process of fully reopening, and today I believe Mr. Geis and Mr. Taylor worked really hard to get our parks back up for sports facilities, which would include things like basketball and soccer. We're all good to go there now, right? Right, so we appreciate that very quick turnaround, Mr. Taylor, and you and your crew for getting that up and running. So our parks plus the walking trails are open, so it's a great way to get out and get exercise. We look to possibly enhance our fall junk days, since we didn't do spring junk days, to a full week. I think that'd be a great idea to give people more chance to get rid of stuff. A lot of people were asking about that, so I think that would be well received if we could pull that off. So I know it's hard on the service part, that's a lot of work, but we do appreciate if you guys will help us out there. And hopefully we'll have a date sometime in the early fall to do that. At this time, our concert series has been canceled just because they had to be set up back in the spring and things were so uncertain. There was no way to coordinate that. We'll continue to monitor that situation. Unfortunately, our Township Law Enforcement Night Out in August has also been canceled. The Township meeting rooms and gym remain closed at this time. Our fireworks for August have also been canceled. And the 2020 Mount Moriah Cemetery and Lantern Lighting event has been canceled. So that's unfortunate. That's a great event a lot of people like to go to, but unfortunately, you have to set it up well in advance, and you just can't do it spur of the moment. So that's the reason for that. So gentlemen, anything else you want to add to that, or any other further comments?
No, you did well, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've got one further,
Okay.
well, two further comments.
All right.
But yeah, Mr. Taylor, excellent work, fantastic work, I mean, and again, working through everything, opening the parks, shutting the parks down, opening them, I mean, that puts a lot of added, cost on your department and resources, so thank you for getting that. I think it's great to have it open for the community, as Trustee McGraw, stated. Thank you. Flag retirement ceremony, just want to mention, VVA Chapter 649, they canceled their annual flag retirement ceremony because of COVID-19. This year, I believe last year it was rained out. I believe Trustee McGee, you spoke, and it was held inside.
It was held inside.
Yeah, and with the Civic Center closed currently right now, they are planning ability for you can still retire your old and tattered flags at special drive-through collection event to be held at Everything Bagels in Eastgate on Sunday, June 14th from 9 a.m. until noon. They've got some incentives for the first 10 people to show up and the second 10 people that show up. Also, if you cannot attend that, you may drop off old flags at Union Township Civic Center, Yellow Ribbon Center, Campbell's Barn, all Union Township fire stations, State Highway Patrol, PNC Bank, Goshen, All American Outpost, Freddy's Restaurant, Beachmont, Madisonville, and everything bagels in Eastgate. Is there anything additional for Union Township Civic Center or Union Township fire stations that we would need to share? This is information that was put out in their newsletter.
That's a great program because
Yeah.
you don't want to just throw your flags in the trash can.
No,
So
absolutely not.
these guys do a great job. I know there's a few Boy Scout groups that do the same thing, but
Yes, they do.
the veterans do a great job with this, and I recommend get an old flag to take care of it that way.
That is correct.
Yep.
But also, if we don't have a meeting till July 9th, I would be remiss by not saying Happy 4th of July then,
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
which is on a Saturday this year.
Happy 4th of July, absolutely. It's a good one.
Happy 4th.
All
It's a
right.
good one.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No, sir.
All right.
Shoot.
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn our meeting then.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue,
Yes.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes.
We're adjourned at 7:56 PM.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you
Thanks for being
for
here.
watching our meeting. We appreciate it. Thanks for the people who came out in person. We do appreciate it.
Amen. Thank you all.